Greetings! Welcome to another tutorial about Bloomreach XM with XIN Mods. In this video, we're going to talk about using Groovy scripts to calculate document fields on the fly. Sometimes it's important to calculate a derivative field when the author changes something in the document. Derived fields often help inform more complex requirements for queries you might be executing on your documents. An example of this could be looking to parent nodes to retrieve the name of the category a document is in. Or perhaps, when you're building a web shop, it could be useful to calculate the average rating of a product based on reviews attached to the product. The out-of-the-box implementation of derived fields is quite limited and quickly starts requiring the implementation of custom classes. Part of what XIN Mods tries to achieve is to significantly reduce the amount of customization you have to do to a vanilla Bloomreach instance to get it to do what you need it to do. So, for now, let's get into it. To keep with the recipes example we have been working on, we will be implementing a Groovy script derivative field that stores the number of ingredients a recipe has, so that in the future we might be able to create a simple recipe filter that allows the user to select recipes by the number of ingredients they require. So let's get started on that. So first of all, make sure you have your Bloomreach instance running. Let's log into our CMS and our console. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to go into our recipe document type, and we're going to add a new field to it. And this field is going to be storing the outcome of the calculation we'll be doing. So let's add an integer number that will store the number of ingredients. Number of ingredients. I'm going to mark it as automatic, because this field will be reset automatically by the system every time the document it belongs to has been saved. So let's commit our change. Great. So now if we go into any recipe, we should see an additional field. Great. Number of ingredients. Okay. To implement the derivative function, we're going to have to go into the console. We're going to have to do two main things. First, we need to inform Bloomreach that we want to actually do something when a change is made to a recipe document. To do that, you go into Hippo Configuration, Hippo Derivatives, and you add a new node. And this node can be named anything. So for us, we're going to call it Count Ingredients. So it's a derived definition, and it's going to have a few properties. And first of all, let's specify the class name. This class name is going to point to a custom piece of code that will be able to compile the Groovy script that we're going to be specifying in the console here. Then we're going to say the node type that's going to be needing this function to run. So in our case, that's the recipe type. And we're going to add a serial version. And then every time, I think the idea is every time you change the implementation, you could update it to be a higher number. Then, for the Groovy script to run, it needs to have access to a few things, namely the ancestors and the UID of the document that's being edited. So let's add some nodes. So the first node is going to be called ancestors, and it's going to be relying on a built-in property. I'm going to say the method is called ancestors. Then secondly, we're going to add another one, and that one's going to be responsible for providing the document's UID. That's a relative property reference. The rel path is going to be JCR UID, like this. Very good. Now let's write that. So that's one part of it. So now every time something changes, Bloomreach is going to try and spin up this class, this one. And in the code of XIN Mods, this then goes looking for another node. And that node lives in our XIN Mods Hippo module configuration. So let's add another folder here. It's called Derivatives. Derivatives. And another folder under that with the name of the document type that is going to be running a script. Okay, very good. And now we add a property to that last node we created called script. And this is going to be housing the Groovy script that we're going to be running. So let me just copy paste something in here, and you'll be able to find a link to my website in the description of this video that should have this code in it as well. Great. So what's happening here? We have a Groovy class called ingredient count derive function, which implements an interface called derive function. This interface requires you to implement a method called derive, which gets the JCR session and the node that is currently being worked on in the workflow. And for now, it's just going to say, okay, print line, it's going to write something to the logs code, and it's going to output determine ingredient count. Then it returns a Boolean. So if during the execution of this function something goes wrong, you'll be able to return false, which will then write some logs that you might be able to monitor for. Great, so now let's save this and let's hope that that did the trick. So let me make this a bit smaller and just let's have a look at what's happening down here in the logs. So we edit it. Oh, great. So it's a processing derivative script for this node path. And then you can see here the message that we've just output. So it ran when I opened it. It's not actually doing anything yet. And it's going to run when we save it. And it's going to run on all the different versions of the document state. And it's going to run when we publish it. So that's very good. So now let's go and update our script to actually do some counting of ingredients. So let's have a look what that looks like. So we're going to be counting the number of child nodes that has the name XIN Mods ingredient. So let's write some code for that. Yeah, I encourage you to write this in a proper editor. So let's do that now. Open this. Let's Sublime going. Groovy. There we go. Very good. So what we want to do is we're going to ask the document variable for all the subnodes called XIN Mods ingredient. And that will return a node iterator. So get nodes, XIN Mods ingredient. I'm going to count how many ingredients there are. And then for every time that it still has a node in the iterator, we're going to add one to the count variable. Then we can say once it's done, okay, we found this many ingredients. And we're going to be setting a property on the document node called ingredients, which is the same identifier that we used when we created the new field in our document. And we're going to store a count. That's it. Okay, let's copy that into here. Let's write our changes. Let's see if it works. So let's go and edit. Now we can see it's still 0, but let's count the number that we have. So it's saying it's actually should be 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, that's correct. So let's save it. There we go. So now hopefully, yeah, and now it's updated our field to say 9. And once we publish it, there you go. That's correct. So those are the 2 steps you want to go through. So the first step is to add a definition into hippo configuration, hippo derivatives, to tell Bloomreach something is needing to happen. And then we define the thing that needs to happen inside the XIN Mods module configuration. Now the last thing you might want to do sometimes is mass update the derivative functions. And so there's a cool little thing you can do with the console. And you can right click on any node and select recompute derived. So now there's some messages that will saying, to automatically batch it. So that's good. So that's okay. You can see that it ran all of them in the background. And now hopefully if we go to another one that we haven't edited yet, yep, it's got the actual count here as well. So there you go. That's how you work with Groovy-based derivatives. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of thing, check out the playlist that popped up on the screen. And if you want to be notified when a new tutorial appears, make sure to subscribe. See you next time.